are taking over. But what they're doing is they're picking apart these ships that are all metal, and all of the material transformed it, yeah, with plastic. Used to be prolific in the Black Sea, in the Caspian Sea. This image is from Kazakhstan because they have the only remaining bits of this species, because in the Black Sea you can't find this fish anymore. Overfishing. Also in the Caspian Sea it's gone. Another place where it used to really thrive was the Aral Sea, and that sea doesn't exist anymore. So the extinction of species is also an important sign that some impact, some major impact is happening because of our activities. Geologists say that there's been 5 major extinctions in the history of the Earth. And they're claiming, or they want to say and produce certain evidence that this time, the age of man, the Anthropocene, is the 6th major extinction. They need to prove that. Geologists don't mess around. They need facts. They need evidence, right? Not like philosophers or other groups. Welcome to the Anthropocene.
This is the story of how one species changed a planet. The latest chapter of our story begins in England 250 years ago. Fueled by coal, then oil, several brilliant inventions appeared. They ignited the Industrial Revolution, which spread like wildfire through Europe, North America, Japan, then elsewhere. The great railways, then cars and highways, connected people across the globe. Medical discoveries saved millions of lives. New artificial fertilizers meant we could feed more people. Population rose rapidly. But this was nothing compared with what was to come. The 1950s marked the beginning of the Great Acceleration. Globalization, marketing, tourism, and huge investments helped fuel enormous growth. People swarmed to cities, which became even more powerful engines of creativity. In a single lifetime, the well-being of millions has improved beyond measure. Health, wealth, security, longevity, never have so many had so much. Yet 1 billion are malnourished. In a single lifetime, we have grown into a phenomenal global force. We move more sediment and rock annually than all natural processes, such as erosion and rivers. We manage 3/4 of all land outside the ice sheets. Greenhouse gas levels this high have not been seen for over 1 million years. Temperatures are increasing. We have made a hole in the ozone layer. We are losing biodiversity. Many of the world's deltas are sinking due to damming, mining, and other causes. Sea level is rising. Ocean acidification is a real threat. We are altering Earth's natural cycles. We have entered the Anthropocene, a new geological epoch dominated by humanity. This relentless pressure on our planet risks unprecedented destabilization. But our creativity, energy, and industry offer hope. We have shaped our paths and a higher path of this story. We are the first generation to realize this new responsibility.
Like I mentioned, there is a new geological era. This is unprecedented. I'll tell you why. The era of man. Because before you name a geological era, this is what the controversy is about, that you need a long period of time that has taken place. These geological eras are huge, hundreds of thousands of years. So there's a lot of controversy. However, they're convinced that something new is happening. Why? Because they're seeing the mark on the Earth itself. And they need evidence, they need to claim or focus on one or two things that can claim that the period that we've entered since the 1950s is leaving an irretraceable mark, a massive, let's say, tattoo on the Earth. Yeah? So one of the big things, one of the variables that they claim that they're thinking of using is this nuclear fallout. Yeah? So you all know that 2 nuclear bombs were exploded in Japan. Yeah? But that wasn't significant as what happened after, which was more nations started producing nuclear weapons and testing all over the oceans. A great Japanese artist created a rendering of these explosions through time. It's incredible if you get a chance to see it. But you see this mark here, this nuclear fallout, these explosions in these testings. USA has tested over 2,000 explosions in different parts of the sea. The UK as well, China as well, Russia as well. All these tests are leaving nuclear sediment in the Earth and leaving their mark. And geologists are saying maybe that's what we should focus on and drive that argument. Another one which I found so fascinating was chicken bones. Because of what with the massive exploitation and production of chicken, they were and the impact that it's having on a whole range of other issues that are connected to livestock and all of that. So the interesting thing is not whether change is happening, but what variables are we going to use to argue that a one of hope, yeah? And that's what we end up sort of playing around, whether man's nature is good and he'll be able Anthropocentrism, that changing of man, it's not about our nature. That's not the problem. There's something else happening in our cultural conditioning that is not allowing us to do anything other than what we've been doing. Yeah? So let me show you an ancient, and those of you maybe in philosophy have seen this before. This is the Scala Naturae, the great chain of being. Okay? In this order and in this universe, everything is clear and structured. What is at the top of this chain of being? God, of course. Yeah? God who created all of the earth and all of the living beings and things that are on this earth are in this structure, this large entity. So everything that is living, everything that is here around us is in this structure of being. And it's hierarchical. It's very clear. God is on top. You have His angels below, human beings, then follow animals, then follow, you can imagine the structure all the way down to the bottom where all the natural elements are there, and including rocks and minerals and resources. Yeah? So this way of perceiving the world, this hierarchical structure, it looks like the IB grading scale, doesn't it? A little bit. Yeah. So is in many ways the way we've existed since the beginning of time. It's the way we've been told that our place in the larger scheme of things. This is another way that we create or define our identity with regards to our surrounding environment. So we have different layers through which we can relate and connect with the environment. At the core layer, we have our egocentrism, yeah? The individualism that in many ways is driving a lot of our culture, a lot of our practices. We have a level above that which is ethnocentric, yeah? This is when everybody gets excited about their nation or about their tribe, yeah? A little bit of tribalism. So ethnic-centric is one way of constructing our identity. The whole game of states, right? of nations is ethnocentric. We have anthropocentric layer, which is above all of that, meaning that the human being is at the center of everything. If we keep going up, other alternatives of identity are animal-centric. So all the animals, and maybe this is why we love cats and dogs on Facebook, not just animals, right? So plants and trees. And at the top of that, obviously, the highest form and most open and inclusive identity would be ecocentric, yeah? Including all the rocks, and the rock nation, and the mineral nation, and everything that has to do with the earth. Where do you lie? Some days I wake up ethnocentric, and other days I wake up anthropocentric. Who knows? But these are the options to us in terms of our identity and our connection. So I want to argue and tell you what anthropocentrism really is, and how we're all in some ways pre-programmed by it, and it's one of the ways that we look at the world without even realizing. Anthropocentrism is basically that the human being is superior and has more moral significance than any other being in or organism in the universe. Yeah? I would claim that anthropocentrism is human supremacy. That we feel, and why not? We are gods on this planet. We came into the planet 200,000 years ago out of the slum, afraid, and nature was our enemy because it was full of dangers. We somehow waged a war with nature over our evolution, and we won that war. But somebody forgot to tell us that the war is over. Yeah? And that our victory could actually be our downfall. Yeah? And the big issue that I have here is that anthropocentrism is human supremacy. It's not our nature. It's not that we have good intentions or bad intentions or that human beings are greedy. This is the cultural construct, the framework through which we encounter the world. It has nothing to do with our nature. So we have a hard time as a species putting limitations. Limitations would require respect and restraint. Yeah? But limitation is something that our species, in some ways, does not understand and seem to address. Yeah? I mean, we about the way that we've encountered. I mean, why don't we limit ourselves? Put down three. Why is it? Either we don't respect the environment, we don't respect others that are view them as resources, natural things that we can use. It has to do with this pre-programmed view. I'm about to tell you a few of them. One of them that I would claim and argue is that development and environmentalism are mutually exclusive. How we put sustainability of development, but in reality, if we look at development and environmentalism, there is no kind of happy connection and medium for those two worlds to harmoniously coexist. This is my point of view, and I'm not alone. Maybe you disagree. One other thing that is our blind spot that is interesting is this shifting ecological baseline. It's becoming normal and acceptable for us to say that species disappear, that no longer can we play outside because the air is polluted. I remember in LA, every time we had in the newspaper the level of air pollution, and some days we couldn't play outside. This is normal and seen as a natural order of things. This is something that really is brand new to us, but we're accepting it as if it's a natural part of our environment. We have amnesia about the living world. Some children have been asked, can you draw me a cow? And you know what they draw? They draw a piece of steak on a plate. because they've never seen a cow. They have a complete disconnection, or they think a cow is that nicely wrapped up piece of bloody meat that has been cut in the supermarket, right? Perfectly manicured, and the invisibility of what's happening is also incredibly present. So, you know the phrase, if a tree falls, I'm saying if a species falls. If a species disappears and nobody hears it, does it matter? Well, it's happening all the time and we're not seeing it, and it's invisible, and it seems like it is a natural way of our current contemporary lifestyle. I love this quote. Men pay for the increase in power with alienation over that which they exercise power. Over that which they exercise power over. And clearly the alienation for us is our natural environment and our relationship to it. We become all-powerful gods, and yet we do not even address or see how things were before because our memory is too short. So the counter to this, people would claim and argue against me and say, no, technology will save us, Jaime, trust us. You know, the research is in there. We have all these options and possibilities. We have a way out. Well, I want to tell you about the robo-chop phenomenon or paradigm. So there was a nuclear energy facility in the north of Sweden, and they started having problems. They're right next to the sea, and they started having problems because jellyfish in large numbers were all of a sudden blocking and not allowing for their propellers to get the water out. So they were having problems with jellyfish, and they needed to do something about it. So they hired a company, and they developed these robots, these killer robots, a single robot that would lead a team of underwater robots that would go into the water and destroy and chop up these jellyfish and leave them into smithereens. Yeah? So that sort of model is in some ways how we're dealing with these environmental issues. We're not addressing the root cause, but we're just addressing the symptom, yeah, through technology. So let's think about it. Okay? Water. You want to live in the desert? No problem. Let's desalinate. Do you understand how much energy it takes to take seawater and extract the salt from it in order to make it usable? That combination is not realistic in a world where petrol becomes less significant and where the energy to desalinate is more than the water that is produced. Yeah? Let's divert a river. Okay? We know where the water is being wasted. These are our approaches to technology. Yeah, we can move the trajectory of rivers and resolve the issue. That doesn't resolve the issue. It just postpones it. Energy, new energy. Everyone heard about biomass and how we're going to use algae and all that. Well, that ship has sailed. Many biomass companies have turned out to be actually using, again, more energy to produce this alternative energy than what the energy itself is giving. And with this new shale gas revolution, which is further digging into the earth, well, it seems that there is nothing that can replace these petrochemical, let's say, energy sources. Well, if the climate gets too bad and things get really terrible, well, our engineers will create special bubbles where we can live and actually be protected. Geoengineering is the solution, yeah? Yeah, we can live in the Arctic. Yeah, we'll just create special new high-tech modern buildings which will protect us in these really extreme situations and environments. That's not a solution. Food security. Well, we're transforming the way we even produce plants, and we also produce animals. We're able to manipulate them. But that in the long run is results that it's going to marketplaces fish. Alternatives not in the long term. Maybe Humans don't have the solution. Maybe we can turn to animals. They might have the solution. I'm going to introduce you to a type of crab that had a revolution, and maybe they can tell us and give us hints as to what we can do. This is in French, so you're going to need to read the subtitles if you want to understand, unless you speak French.
Dans les eaux marronâtres de l'estuaire de l'Onde, entre les rochers repeints au fioul et les sables vaseux qui abritent les meilleurs huîtres du monde, personne ne se doute de la tragédie qui nous frappe depuis 120 millions d'années. Nous, les Pachygraphus marmoratus, appelés communément chancre-mou, ou plus souvent, crabe dépressif. Vous savez, nous sommes 3 carrés, des cadeaux, même pas du fable. Ceux que les gamins s'amusent à attraper afin d'en arracher les pattes. Les crabes qui puent, les crabes qui donnent des maladies. Bref, une espèce qui n'a jamais demandé à voir le jour.
Bon, ben, c'est pas tout ça, mais faut que j'y aille. Tu pars par où? Par là. Et toi? Ah, moi je vais par là. Bon, alors voyons. Ciao. Ciao. Et merde.
Car notre tragique destin est bien pire que tout cela. Si la nature nous a permis de nous déplacer sur le côté, comme nos cousins les étrilles ou les tourteaux, elle ne nous a pas en revanche accordé le droit de pouvoir tourner. Une tare génétique qui nous condamne à marcher toute notre vie, suivant la même ligne droite.
Alors tu vas dans le droit chemin? Ouais, c'est ça, casse-toi.
Notre dessin est tracé dès notre naissance, en fonction de l'emplacement de notre tête. Certains de la chance, d'autres moins. Certains ont une vie passionnante, d'autres moins. Mais malgré toutes ces inégalités, nous finissons tous par devenir fonctionnels. Mais certains peuvent voir leur destin changer d'une minute à l'autre.
Hé, qu'est-ce qui se passe? Je dirais que c'est une jour de chance. Ouais, super, je change de trajectoire. Et là, ciao mon pote, à toi la nouvelle vie.
Et qui de nous ce handicap? Je ne saurais même pas vous dire où nous nous trouvons dans l'échelle de l'évolution. Franchement, par là. Non, peut-être que c'est pas par là. Je sais pas. Un jour, un gamin a arraché les pattes de l'arme de nous. Le pauvre a tourné en rond pendant des mois. Mais à quelque chose, malheureux bon, et à mesure qu'il tournait, le crabe réfléchissait. Et il est devenu philosophe. Enfin, disons, un peu moins bête que les autres. Il a compris beaucoup de choses sur notre condition. Ses pattes ayant repoussé, il est monté sur un rocher. Et on l'a écouté. Et il nous a dit ceci.
On va quelque part.
Alors, qu'est-ce qui a changé? D'accord, on ne peut toujours pas tourner. Mais maintenant, on est fiers d'être des Pachygraphus marmoratus. Mais attendez de savoir ce qui m'est arrivé bien des années plus tard, à la suite d'une catastrophe, comme vous seuls les humains savez le faire. J'avais me faire aplatir par un tel de 800 mètres de long, on a vu pas de territoire. J'étais piqué. J'avais tourné. J'ai compris du même coup que si on ne tournait pas, ce n'était pas à cause de notre carapace, c'est parce qu'on était trop con. Mais déjà, le mien me regardait avec un regard. Oui, chez les crabes, on ne rigole pas avec les mœurs. Je me suis donc remis dans mon axe, et j'ai poursuivi mon destin. Et un jour peut-être, se souviendra-t-on qu'à cet endroit précis, un Pachygraphus marmoratus a délibérément changé de direction.
So there is a possibility. Just like the crabs, we've been walking in the same direction, back and forth. Let's see what our options are. This is my last slide, and I hope that this can set off a discussion on what you guys think about this topic. So, well, one of the things that we can do is maybe shed our anthropocentric view and say we're going to take on a biocentric ethics. Not only do human beings all have the rights to a life and the whole Declaration of Human Rights, but we'll apply that to every single living organism. Okay? From the bees and the flies, everything in the non-human world will have the same rights as we do as human beings. Are we ready to do that? Maybe that could be a way that we can turn and start to see things in a new light. Well, a lot of the possibilities we see out there are self-help. Well, I'm just going to lead an individual ecological life. Yeah? I'll buy eco-friendly products, eco-friendly clothes. Maybe that will have an impact. Maybe minimal one, but it's not going to be the turn that the crabs did, not the turn that we need. Respect for nature. Yeah? Respect is possible only if you feel that you're an equal between the other being. And unfortunately, I think can exist in anthropocentrism. Are there different levels of anthropocentrism? Maybe soft and hard anthropocentrism. I don't know. In a biocentric world, respect for nature might have a place. Sustainability, which is the key word in our mission, in all of the big multinational corporations, in everything anybody's doing today, I wonder, and I'm still questioning, what are we trying to sustain? Sustainability is about sustaining something. It's clearly not about the environment. It's not about sustaining biodiversity. Is it about sustaining productivity? About sustaining growth? Maybe is it about sustaining consumption? I don't know. But it's not about sustaining anything to do with the natural environment, in my view. Economic turn. Maybe it's the system, the capitalist system, and our production system and our consumption. That's what's driving and making this so problematic. Well, maybe one alternative is, let's stop growing. The no-growth theory. Okay, we've developed enough. Let's stop pursuing growth as a model. Well, that seems really normal for advanced industrial nations who've already created very, very developed and wealthy economies, but it doesn't seem fair for the large nations and parts of the world that are trying to develop and prosper, right? And a political turn. Is there any political will across any states or across a collection of states that really wants to change this relationship between man and the environment? I think that's an unprecedented paradigm shift. I don't think the political will or capacity is there. So thank you guys, and I hope that we can have a nice discussion about this topic. How about one at a time? Ask one question, see if anybody else wants to speak.
So the first, okay, we'll just eliminate some of them. I think one of the most important ones is the fact that we're living in Dilijan right now, and our school has a lot of impact on this place. Not only in an economic sense, but also in the sense of sustainability and like all those things that are related to the nature. And when Lillian came to the school, the architect of the school, we were talking, and she wants to have a development structure for the whole Dilijan instead of a more localized one like the Città Slope that has started in Italy, which supports the local economy and local way of living. But so after the presentation that you made, and bearing these in mind, what do you think about the future of Dilijan in an anthropocentric sense?
I mean, from the argument that I've laid up, I would be very, very critical of the development model and the sustainable model. If we're talking about man's relationship with the environment, right? However little impact, the impact is still there. So in my point of view, you could use the sustainable keyword and catchphrase as many times as you want. But what all the activities that human beings have been doing and seem to be doing, even probably in the plan that seems very reasonable and seems very, very kind of slow and connecting with the lifestyle, trying to keep it as least impacting as possible, if you put this small microcosm of our world in Dilijan and you multiply it by even all of the other little models of hundreds of thousands of other little cities that are doing in different degrees a similar thing, well then I think the view stands. And I think that just by putting sustainability and saying that we're going to be eco-friendly doesn't change our cultural programming, our way of interacting with the environment. Yeah.
But can I say something else? So, I mean, I understand what you mean, but I think it's the case where I would view actually even the term of Anthropocene a very occidental term coming again from the, like the developed world. So they've come to this point where they have achieved everything. They feel that the war with nature has finished. But I think, for example, people who live in Ethiopia are very much connected to the nature. They don't have this disconnection that a person living in the US has. So I think we're again talking about dominating the whole discourse by the Occidental view, because it's not just human supremacy, it's the Western human supremacy. So deciding what is so I mean that I think Dilijan deserves its development plan, and in case of Dilijan, it's about sustaining the town. And in case of developing New York City, that's completely different.
And so okay, this one is for Evan. So what do you think is the best option? Do you think that because development has always negative impact somehow, so which one is the best? Going local and stopping the development, or just keep developing for the sake of having more political power and
But I think that I was actually yesterday listening to Jose Mujica's speech, and I always like listening to his speeches. And he's a former president of Uruguay, and he's also the poorest president in the world, former president. And he always says in every speech, this is a political question. Everything we're talking about, you cannot justify economically, because as Jaime said, if we kind of driven by if we walk in the same direction, the way we're walking, we cannot justify what we want to do. We cannot justify control of consumerism. We cannot justify less production. There is no way of justifying it, because our economic mindset has told us the more capital.
And the growth mindset, the progress mindset is about more and no limitations. Yeah?
It's a political question where the leading countries of the world have to politically decide that there is, so that they're facing a problem of too much consume, where they have to impose, and I might sound like a socialist, where they have to impose political decisions, or to make the growth economically not, which means progressive taxation. I don't know. I come to the point where I'm not such a socialist, but I guess I am. I don't know.
What does everybody think? I mean, are you guys hopeful? I mean, I know a lot of people bet on technology. Yeah?
I disagree that it's political. I think that sometimes we should think different and don't think that it's political, and maybe it's not economical, but we can change some social ways to solve the problems. For Dilijan, we can see that there is a problem. The people are local, and they don't want to do something, and everybody thinks that it couldn't be changed. They think that politicals should change, that government should be changed, and after government changed, they will change the vote, change the Dilijan, change the whole Armenia, but I don't think so.
That's a really good point. That, like, I mean, yeah, it's very complex. If the individual citizens say, well, somebody else is going to deal with it. No, the government is going to finally, you know, take on this issue of the environment, and they'll take it over, and so it paralyzes them. You're right.
And I will just thought that you just say that how you say that big countries, or how do you say main countries, yes, should change something. No, not main. There are no main countries. There are no big countries. Big differences are coming from small differences.
So you think that there could be a wave of bottom-up influence and transformation of everything? Yeah.
Starting with small, you can change bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
I think that in order to do like trying to be sustainable in this kind of environment that we're living in this kind of world, I think there has to be like a structural change. Like, I think like it's really difficult to like I think the whole structure has to change because like this is the kind of world that we live in that is based on like consuming and producing in massive amounts. And if like any one country or any group of people decide to like stop going at that pace, then they're going to miss out. They're going to fall back, and I think the economy will like suffer. So I don't think anyone can actually afford to go on the right path or change this.
But structural changes could happen either from above, top down, or bottom up, right? Revolutions do happen, yeah.
I think that a lot of the technology is out there already, like not the technology to move rivers, but like the technology for solar panels or things like that. And so I think that it really is also like a personal thing. And I mean, we do have to change the structure, but I think that there's not much more research that we can do to find better kinds of fuels. Like we have kinds of fuels that, okay, we can improve on them, but like with solar panels and stuff, it exists. We just haven't accepted it. We haven't implemented it. We aren't using it. And so I think that a lot of the problem is in the structure, and that if people start making changes, then like you were saying,
So like a little cocktail of self-help and a little self-help, and then also maybe some structural political changes, yeah, to sort of an economic address it to for alternative energy, yeah, maybe. Yeah.
I would like to follow the statement about like structural change or like a more micro like perspective, because I think if one actor, a little actor, wants to make differences, they should at least be capable to do so. Like for example, I think when we are saying about technology and how a single actor can make difference, they're assuming that it is capable already. Because I've been to some like western cities and little towns in China where they located in the mountain, and they're actually the location is like religion, but they do not have any technology, and like the building, the architecture and things are all different. And the environmental pollution there is also severe because most of the time people are still making fire by burning wood, and like and sometimes the electricity is even cut off at summer, and they could not change. And also the ideology in that city, like for example my hometown, like the ideology people are still following is still the ideology like far back in the last century when our President Mao was in charge of the country. So I think in order to change or in order to make them to act to make difference, we should like first improve the economic structure and also the ideology.
That's a really good point. Maybe education, right? Maybe a mixed cocktail of education can give you another.
In our country, is like Elena mentioned, like socialism. So our country does impose policy. Currently, our policies tend to focus on the economy.
On growth, yeah.
On the
economic growth.
Yeah.
Like we have lots of economic bubble and lots of like direct kind of economic phenomena. They are all supposed just to boost our economy. So it's very
And some cities are unlivable in terms of because of growth has been so incredible. Yeah, Bora, then Francesco.
Yeah, to elaborate on, like, to answer John's question, what should be done, and to elaborate on what he said, I think the ecology is not reflected, like, not important enough in our economies. I think the way we treat the ecology in our economy, like how we reflect it, is very primitive. Like the prices goes higher only when a resource is scarce, but like as long as there is enough resource and it's cheap enough in terms of human labor, in terms of machinery. And they pollute the environment so much. We also talked with municipality, and they said that the cost of maintaining an air filter is higher than cost of cost of paying the fines. So instead of the companies, instead of paying the fine to the government, like instead of maintaining an air filter and using one, they decide to just pay the fine, which is much cheaper for them. And I think to some extent this applies to the whole world and like our approach to the ecology and like how much we care.
Thank you. I mean, that's called in the economic world externalities, right? Like all the extra hidden cost, somebody else's problem. I'm just thinking about right maintaining. So thank you. It's a really good point. And there was a lady here talking about actually the copper pollution and how the levels of cancer in Alaverde are much higher than in other territories. And it's right there, and still we're sort of blind to it, or nobody's making the connection.
Back to the idea of the non-growth theory, and back to what he said about the plans of future about big countries like China or every single country making plans about economical future is always based on growth. So the growth theory, I think, is something that is not possible. And you said it is possible. No, it could be possible when developed nations stop, but it would be unfair for undeveloped nations. I think it's quite the opposite, because if you see, I said it, but if you see all the programs, all ideas are always like increasing some industries, increasing the produce of something, increasing the consuming. So also creating, back to the Trump-Clinton debate, it was always about increasing workplaces, but it means increasing industries, increasing products, it's always about growth. I think it's like an impossible theory.
Oh, I agree. I mean, in our current paradigm and the way that we understand, progress is growth, right? And I agree that it's not an alternative. Again, but if we're thinking box, if we're trying to think of ways, there are things we can think up, whether they're applicable or not, whether there's a will, it's always
Maybe some loud thinking about it. If you look at the growth of population over the past few thousand years, you can also see that along with the growth in the population, that the growth in the demand of energy, usable energy. And if you sort of plot them, we can see that it's both of them going up simultaneously. Also, we call it a growth over development. Does it mean that the growth means more and more demand of energy? And there is a lot of energy available in the nature, and what we are trying to do is we are trying to extract that energy. The fundamental need is perhaps to make our life more comfortable, right? And accommodate more and more population to it. Is that the basic problem that we are having?
No, it's a great idea. So it's not about economic growth. It's about growth in humans and their need for a very simple variable, which is energy. It's a great sort of image for us to think about. I mean, yeah, continue.
We talk about per capita consumption of energy in different societies, and we see that the society which is developed society and developing society gap between this. But that can be also characterized by the consumption of energy, kind of. And everything that we do to make our life comfortable requires energy. Producing simple fabric also requires energy. That's what we are getting it from the nature.
You make me think, if we want to get socialist, we take energy, all of the energy, and make it a collective good. Okay? A universal collective good that each nation, according to population maybe, gets a certain amount of energy. Okay? In some ways, we reverse this with in terms of pollution, and it goes back to Bora's point of playing this game. So certain companies got a certain amount of pollution, and then if you didn't use that level of pollution, you can actually sell it in the market, and you can sell. Right? Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, this idea of carbon credit. Oh, you're a non-polluting company or nation. Well, you can sell it in the open market. Again. In the end, it's just about, again, there is a limitation there, right? But whether that limitation will stop the inevitable global warming and the rest of it is difficult, yeah.
I just want to verify, what do you mean by economic growth? Is it like the urge to be like comfortable with?
Yeah, I mean, in a simple variable that is used for economic growth is GDP. Yeah. So production. How much production does a territory have? And that means in terms of industrial goods, services, right? But maybe economists in the room can. What does it mean to grow economically? Yeah. That.
For example, I don't see it as a political thing, like divided by nations. I mean, like we had a talk. I don't remember the woman's name. They talked about powerful cities. Powerful cities. Like, the world is like separating now.
Thank you.
The world is separating now to powerful cities more than powerful nations. And that a lot of, for example, if you see the vegan movement, like how many people trying to go vegan recently, you see that a lot of people will justify it environmentally as well as like health. And you can see that people change the way they consume things, and this is about a blind spot, about changing some people's route and not finding some industrial solution or.
So yeah, you're believing in self-help can become a sort of grassroots movement, right? That can really transform. But
Decide at the end of the day what we want from the economic growth, so we can change what we want.
yeah, but the volume of trade and the interconnectivity of the supply chain. This is one thing that was sort of blind to me, but the more I start to think about it is, even if I change my patterns as a consumer, do I understand all the bits and pieces, the supply chain of everything that is produced and how it's all interconnected, in the sense that the amount of scope through where pieces of the puzzle are taken in. It's like each product is a huge jigsaw spread over geography and territory, and all of that. Well, again, if one crab turns, nothing happens. No? They all go back. But can it, not only small change, but can it drive a larger change across? Yeah. Yeah.
We see that as well as education spread and it's become more globally, more people are changing, more people are seeing environment.
I agree that there is a potential there. There is a potential for a turn and a change. I just wonder, even with that viewpoint, can you really still disregard the idea that humans feel superior? I mean, is there really a way of deprogramming that across the world through education, maybe?
Actually, I have a good example
Yeah.
for that. In my country, we have this problem. The water level of my country has decreased enormously in last 15 years, and we are literally in a very bad situation for that. It's a drought, basically. So this campaign has started last 4 months in my country by a very famous TV show that I think most people watch it. It's called Drop by Drop. So basically, people would sign up to save, like each week they have to just save as much as water as they can, even if it's a drop. And it's started, and now after 4 months, it's 1,500,000 people have signed up for it. And I was searching to see if there's any statistics for it, but whatever they say is that it has actually enormous change in the whole society, and they're like so hopeful that in the end, the water level for Iran would be kind of compromised, and they would actually control this drought. So I don't think it's just something that would need a revolution or something, because at the same time we had this policy by our government that for fuel consumed that the cars shouldn't be used. Like they had different plaques, so they had this program to reduce the usage of like private cars, but they couldn't do it because people would find other ways to break the law.
Well, yeah.
But actually, this one actually worked, even if though the government didn't force people, and then it's just individuals signing up for it.
You know what's so ironic about this whole thing? Nobody wants the water to end. Nobody wants the river to be polluted. This is the tragedy of the commons, or what is spoken of. Nobody wants these things to happen. And when we're beyond a crisis point and something does happen, well, this example that you give about Iran is one of limitations. People have to limit what they're using. Is everybody here ready to sacrifice and limit your lifestyle, even the traveling that you do? A whole set of issues. I mean, one thing is eating vegan. That's a step. But let's talk about the larger thing. All the products that you buy, everything that you do, your whole lifestyle. Our society's ready. Maybe and this was a great example. In one issue, yes, but maybe on another, no. They'll always find the free riders, the ones who will take advantage. Yeah. So, yeah. Thank you so much.
Seeing, like, we all don't want the water to be over, we all don't want things to be polluted. Before this, I think people should make wider their perspective. For example, I want to just mention something now that you have seen Mexico City in a picture. There's a good example. There's an organization that invites schools from all around Mexico City to see the last healthy river in Mexico City. People, like kids in Mexico City, they even knew there was a river. Like, they didn't even knew that Mexico City was full of rivers. So people have to see the impact. And I think this is a step before, the causes. This is the step in the middle between causes and consequences. And people just, I sometimes try to skip this step, but I think it's really important. Another example I want to give is, sorry, Jeppe. Today they were talking about, Jeppe was talking about an ad, sea pollution, and he was saying this ad was about a sushi wrapped instead of seaweed in plastic, and he was saying, yeah, this picture shows us how the sea is polluted. Instead of showing us these horrible pictures about beaches full of plastic, and no, those horrible pictures, no, just like sushi, this is normal. And I was saying, like, for me, this is my reality. Maybe for you it's an ad, but for me it's my reality. And now Jeppe knows that this is a reality, or maybe he knew about like English burgers or something. So maybe this step of opening perspective, I think, is really important.
Okay, so I'm going to make a little bit of veganism when you were making documents, and in fact one of my classes was about that. But the thing is, like, not only, I mean, by people not being vegan, they do not only torture animals or use chemicals and we get bad chemicals in our body, but but they also feed animal with a lot of crops that can be enough for people, that if people weren't eating meat, they would like, it would be enough food for everyone to not to get hungry. Oh my god, I'm really bad at English right now. Yeah, it's still, but no, I'm going to connect it to somewhere. And at this point, there's some, like, veganism is not something that people can do all around the world, because they're also the culture, like Islamic people, where they sacrifice animals, and it's actually making most of the economic relations of this Islamic countries. So it comes down to how the politics and the people affect the society so that they can be used for it. And then this is not the only cause. Even the people go like sustainable or environmental ethics, they go with these values. Even though there are people like, I don't know, like medicine companies that just cause problems so that they can sell their things. So in the end, it just comes down to how much money people want to earn. And at that point, there is not a special limitations to that. And I mean, like when you look at how Ebola started, it started in 3 different regions. So even though we accept the things that are given to us by social media itself, and the government, there's actually so much going on behind it. And I think even though these ideas are very positive, I think there's also the negative side that nobody really acknowledges, even though people heard about these things. There are conspiracy theories, and because of the high population, I think most of the governments are trying to reduce the number of people. Some people say that this is how HIV got started. This is why people put sodium fluoride in the water, so that people go dumb and they don't question a lot of things. And there are even like families, I don't know if maybe this is a biased opinion, but nevertheless, there's a book that talks about that. There are even families in the US, like evangelist people, who believe that the Jesus Christ is going to come to earth when there is only chaos and all those stuff. So some people are in fact trying to make the world a bad place for their own purposes, whatever it may be. So I think from that percent, even though the 99% of the people who's from the society wants that, unless 1% of those people who are actually manipulating the things in the world, I don't really think that it will be possible to live in a world that's like sustainable and environmental.
I like your point about the end times, like, and actually it's not just evangelists. There's cults around the world. It's one of my favorite topics, actually, cults and how they develop, and they're everywhere, and they're based around, the apocalypse and the end of times. Have you noticed how many movies and documentaries are also trying to instill fear into the population, and how we love to hear about what the end of the world would look like? That taps into one of our basic root sort of elements that brings our brain into focus, which is fear. But what we want is control. But nobody has control over these large, complex processes, and that's why self-help, in some ways, is so nice. We don't even need to be ethical anymore with the environment. My consumption makes me ethical. It's fascinating how this trend of I'll buy a T-shirt and 15% of that T-shirt is going to whatever cause or whatever. But if we really take a look at everything that we consume and our lifestyles, and we really dig deep and see the whole chain of the supply chain and everything that has gone into, we're violating human rights, we're violating environmental rights. A whole range of contradictions come up. Yeah.
For me, I want to talk about this our behaviors, human behaviors, it's the main cause. We see we want to get development, economic development, the increase of well-being, our standard of being, and the standard of living. A person cannot walk from UWC to here because he wants to be have a good, he wants to have a standard stuff like that. He will use a car. He will just move from UWC to up here in the center. That car is polluted, those gases from the car. He is increasing the status, forgetting that it is something that is destroying. But what I think is that people, they are the ones we from us, we can just change our minds and like think twice so that we can just see what we are causing, that as long as the effects will come like to us in the future. Because like if like you used to have like some seasons and now like the summer can last for like 6 months. What happened? It's like we are the one to just sit down and see what is happening and then we can just.
But imagine the nightmare for us as individuals. Imagine the responsibility. Every decision we make, we have to not only think about how it's going to impact our life, how it's impacting our community, how it's impacting the world environment. I mean, it's a lot to put on the individual, right? This huge ethical burden of every action that you do impacts the biosphere. And the normal reaction is either I don't care, or it's too much, or it's just a shirt, it's just a flight, I'm just going to take a small flight, who cares? It's not really making a difference.
Talk about sustainability. What do we actually mean by sustainability? Do we have our goals which are global or local? How do we define it and how do we calibrate it to decide whether we are sustainable or not? Or do we have a larger goal that this is the goal, and when we reach there, we are sustainable? Are we clear about these ideas?
17. There's 17 sustainable development goals that the UN and 200 plus nations have agreed that these are the priorities.
Global or local?
Well, the difference between the goals that they set before this is that the Millennium Development Goals were about states taking action in their territories with these issues. Now, this new set of goals, which has, I think, a 5-year plan or something, maybe even larger, they're about bringing in state actors with NGOs and local community. The idea is that all range of actors combine to address these issues. But this is some of the markers that they're looking at, but again, they're really big, high-reaching, idyllic targets. Eradicate extreme poverty is one of them. Everybody has a decent access to a job and a future. These things are difficult. Full employment, they're saying full action. Yeah. Let's hear you and then.
Yeah, like about the goals. Yeah, there are some goals, but if like UN set some goals, the people will think that those goals are for the nations. They are the nations to follow them. Forgetting that the government are the government. The people are the ones to make them.
Yeah.
It starts by me and you, another one. Like just like if me I share, maybe you are going to see that I have changed. Maybe you can do the good way and you can just do what you're doing. This is for the government. Maybe they are the ones to set some policies, and then we know that if the government says that it sets some policies, we're going to say no, government has to learn something like that.
Yeah.
And fight for that. I don't know.
So maybe we need to. Thank you. Yeah.
I think I want to add up to that. The thing that the main issue is raising awareness. You said there are two kinds of people. One that the person who says that I don't care, and the person who says that it's too much. There is a third person who doesn't even know. In the Middle East, most people do not even know about global warming, and I think this is a really, really big problem, really big issue. For example, when someone asks my brother why he's a vegetarian and he says because of global warming, no one understands the connection. Literally, no one in my community understands what is the connection, and that's really a huge problem.
Even in our school, probably the connection that by eating meat, right? The meat production produces a lot more CO2, is it, and methane and different that actually makes. Yeah.
Yeah, and some people, the kind of people who would say that it's too much. For example, in our school, when I say, for example, please do not take the elevator because you can walk, the main argument that someone would give me is that look at all the energy the school is wasting, and I'm just wasting this like small amount of energy with me going up the elevator. And what I answer to those people is that you don't control what the school is doing, but you control the elevator. You control the switch. You turn on the elevator when the elevator comes to you, and it's like a basic change that you can change in your life. And I think that if we raise awareness in all the places in the world, and people make small changes like this kind of change, or for example, stop using plastic bags. For example, in a lot of countries, they don't charge for plastic bags, and that's why the people don't even consider taking their bags with them. For example, my family in Russia now starts taking their bags with them to the supermarket. It's not because they want to be eco-friendly, they just because it costs something. I think if we do these small changes, all of us in the whole entire world, it would be a really significant change. And I don't think the argument about it's too much is a very strong argument because no one's asking you to do it.
But the doesn't matter is a big one. And that, those things, and I love that, I mean, I agree with you guys that those things are important, but they require restraint, they require limitation, and they require another attitude, not like, well, it's the advanced industrial nations that are polluting, who cares, they ruin the planet, or, well, we're wasting energy, who cares, I'm just doing something so little. It's this doesn't matter, right? It's a real, it's a new ethical being, really.
Like, I want like to tell you, like, see the diseases that they are like coming in this earth. The diseases, these cancers, they are like the rate of like cancer is increasing. It's because of what we don't know. Most of people say this and this. We just search like the cause elsewhere. Like we forgetting that the cause is like this pollution.
Our activities, yeah.
The pollution, the fertilizers we use, fertilizers we fertilize the soil and we grow some crops, and those crops we grow there and some we just consume them. If we consume them, they are not those chemicals used, they are not going to stay in the so we are just adopting them in our body. And then see those industrial products we are consuming, they are not of chemicals, they are not of like this, even the lab they tell you don't touch, I don't know these elements, I said don't touch it or don't eat. But you can just see like they produce like a product containing that thing. And then we are not going to face the consequences immediately, but the least that we will see it later. And we will not remember that it is because of that I have ate all this and this. We are just going to search for the cause somewhere else. Forgetting that it's you just did something in the past. And you forget it, and then now you are just having the result. And then people here nowadays people are not like thinking that thing because they can see that the rate of cancer, the rate of diseases, we have a lot of new diseases which was not there a lot like in the past 50 years or 100 years. It's like
You know, just to add to that, and it's fascinating what you're saying, that yeah, our activities and the connections of increasing cancer, like the disconnect is there, but even in places we've been taking so much antibiotics that the science is out that we take antibiotics when we don't need it for certain viruses and things, and the viruses are getting stronger and they don't even react anymore to the medicines that we. They're much quicker and more mobile and adaptable than us. So, yeah, you're right that it's incredible how our activities and the effects of those activities, they're sort of invisible. Or again, we don't want to deal with it. And ignorance is an issue. Maybe people don't know. Do we forgive them? Okay, but what about educated people? We're also blind. And we're the ones who rationalize. This is TOK right here, guys. We rationalize this.
They're not ready to let it go.
Nobody wants limits. Of course. And it seems so insignificant.
No, but it's all about, like, for example, in Israel, begin. It's about feeling like you're a good person, like if you're vegan or
Yeah.
you're vegetarian, you're perceived differently. It's about society norms. It's not about giving up some comforts. It's about like how you perceive it.
Yeah.
Everyone decides now that living in the woods, like I don't know how, but not using electricity anymore would be the best thing to be the best person in the world. People will change.
But societies evolve and they get morally, they get ethical maturity, let's say, right? So these new environmental feelings, even environmental political movements, you know where they started? They started in the most advanced industrial, the post-materialist countries. Once they've had all their creature comforts, then they could start to think about, and start to separate themselves. So, of course it's possible, right? But it takes place over a long period of time, and these ethical values might impact one place in a way that it don't impact another place, right? And what we need is a fully combined effort, a massive effort to stop all of this.
Can I just say something? Like we're talking about the individual to greater society and having to make individual choices in our own lives on a daily basis, but it comes a point that the state where we are in terms of our resources, that change is simply going to take too long to actually happen. Like by the time this world is destroyed in a way, and I know that's very pessimistic, but in a way it's true. And even once you are aware of it, how do you know what to adhere to? Is it okay? Am I going to become a vegan? Am I still going to buy ecological T-shirts? How can I be sure of where they produce? And there's this guy in the US who developed something called the Venus Project, and it's how there's a limited number of resources in the world, and you should engineer around those resources. Why not? The technologies are available. We have the minds, we have the capacity, we have the production capacity, but then there are the political barriers to it. It's more out of actual the small minority, and this goes back to a bit of Jame's point of the small minority at the top that does have the power, does have the money, does have the choice at the end of the day to make the decisions. It's not in the majority's hands, potentially, but the time frame of it can simply take too long. And that is one side. Maybe it should be collaborative. Maybe it should be collaborative that the minority, the really powerful minority should do something about it, and the majority, us, we should do something about it. I think this is the best solution.
But even though that we, as the majority that doesn't have this power to make any significant changes, or even if we have this power, it would just simply take too long that there is no use to it. But it's still, if we don't start, then we don't know if this could actually happen or not. I mean, what can we do rather than just trying to just do simple steps and help our environment to improve one by one, and then society in here, and then even just these 14 UWCs, this is a change, and then we go back home, and then just our homes. This is, I think, even though small, but it makes enormous changes.
So this is the Mother Teresa Denise philosophy: do it anyway. Yeah. And maybe that is one way of doing it. But Daniela's position still is also very firm as well, that you might be doing it, you might feel really good, and maybe you have an impact in the people around you and you create a whole new way of thinking and acting. But in the larger picture of the massive changes that we've left scarred in the earth, and knowing how little the human being is in the large scope of things. And I'm not saying that the actions don't have an impact. Of course they do, right? But in larger geological space, and these things only work if they're extended over long periods of time. And Daniela is saying that we don't have the time. We're past the threshold of, right, of reversing this. And so, yeah, the actions are important. They need to be sustained, continual, and spread and increase, multiply. And that will have an impact.
And then also, just want to reiterate that my point is more that we need a larger infrastructure in which we can actually, our individual actions can feed into it. And yeah, there will be individuals in little societies who will become aware of it, and we can raise that awareness with marketing. It's as simple as you said, like make it fashionable and everybody will do it. But there has to be something larger at a global scale that people are working towards. And it can't be nationalistic, it can't be self-centered, because then there will come a point where, you know, yeah, my country's fine, but what about my neighbor? And it's sort of this trade-off which needs to happen.
But what I'm saying is that I totally agree with you. But what I'm saying is that even that this global program that we're talking about, like alone on its own cannot work. It needs these individuals, corporations, all of these to happen together. Education, like this whole big program, and then all this needs to go like at the same time so that it will have an actual effect in this limited time we have. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
While talking about the great things, I think one of the most overlooked things is that like the environmentalism comes with pacifism. Like I remember reading an article that just a military practice, yet alone a whole war. You know, like you just roll the tanks on street and show your enemies how strong you are and stuff. Like just the practice consumes as much as fuel as the old like school buses consume in Istanbul for a month. And there are 1.3 million students in Istanbul who are going to school every day. Like if you think like that, just a military practice which takes a day consumes as much as like oil that you spend a whole month for the students. And like think about all those carriers around the world floating on somewhere with lots of jets in it and which has lots of fuel, and all those again bombs and the research cost, which is also I think really important because like the effort spent on the research on the bombs on the airplanes, which is designed to kill people, which is designed to burn forests, etc., can go into many different areas. I don't think that technology is like, I think it became like a scapegoat that we just beat and like it's bad. I mean, I'm not a primitivist and I don't think that we as individuals can make a huge impact, but still it's a thing. I think like we can change much greater things that can have a much greater effect with much little effort. Like I don't think that I will stay at home during the summer and like to protect the environment I will not have a holiday. But like I can imagine a future where there are less tanks, less carriers, less nuclear bombs, less money spent on research, and it doesn't degrade my life quality or my enjoyment of life.
I really like that connection, actually. That's a really, really interesting and good connection. And the geologists would agree with you because they're saying that those nuclear bombs and those nuclear practices are the real evidence that this era, combining with all the other variables, yeah.
Can I just add one thing? Like the funny thing is that I think the problem with the technology is we don't know the consequences, and it's more like let's try and see. Like I remember again reading an article about nuclear bombs. They didn't know whether atmosphere will catch on fire or not when they detonate the bomb, because of the high oxygen and nitrogen concentration. They had no clue, yet they
tried it anyway.
And they were like, oh, thank God it didn't happen. I mean, that's, I think, our general approach to everything. Like, we try and see, and then we are like, oh, it's like, we real. I think it's like the mentality also.
It's our anthropocentrism. It's that we can control everything, yeah, and we'll resolve it. Even if it gets out of control, we'll manage it because we are what we are. We're superior. We're the masters of the universe.
I think it's important to have both individual effort and something that's global, because I agree that we do not have time, but if we do succeed in something globally, we will still need individual efforts for like really future. Yeah.
No, I
agree. You can't work one without the other. You need both of them.
And I mean, and the power of little actions. I mean, I agree. You guys are convincing me. You see, the individual actions are structured to deal with some issue. could be a framework for other places. It doesn't even matter that we're here in Armenia. It could be applied in a million different other places, right? So the portability of ideas and the impacting of individuals, I mean, it's a potential there. It's like a wire that you can light up and it can really spread in ways. But it needs to be continual, important, and combined with other, right? We need a big cocktail of variables. Yeah. Set and then.
What I want to say is, like throughout the entire session, like this topic actually interlinks with a lot of other topics such as philosophy and economics. And one of the things that I would like to talk about is the philosophy aspect, like the moral obligations that we have. And also, at first in the beginning, like when we were doing the presentation, I felt really hopeless, and I also felt really like skeptical, and I think that like massive change is needed to. But I felt that like no matter what we were doing, like we were not like going anywhere near our goals. However, when I started looking at the 17 sustainable development goals, and also thinking about like how we can promote like positive change, not just for the environment but also for ourselves, such as like peace and justice, strong institutions, gender equality, like zero hunger, eradication of poverty. I realized that when we started thinking of sustainable development in our own interest, then we actually find incentive for us to make change. And I think that and I think we should. I know this sounds a bit like controversial and selfish, but I think this, for the sake of our own self-preservation, that we should hear the argument towards helping ourselves and saving ourselves. And I think this would actually be more effective and productive than being like biocentric or ecocentric.
So flipping anthropocentrism would be like, it's for our species' salvation. In some ways, yeah. The Anthropocene is a mirror to the human being and saying, don't you want to keep yourself here as the master? I like that. I like that.
And also, I think what really interested me when you were presenting is when you said what is sustainability, whether it is actually like preserving the biodiversity and the consumption. And I think that actually like sustainability and this like in this age and time is actually like for our own consumption, and how we can balance between consuming for ourselves and also ensuring that we have enough resources for ourselves.
And for our lifestyle, for sure. For sure, yeah. That's one.
Yeah, like for me, our goals are sustainable development. People, like whatever we do, we want to do. Forgetting that even the people in 100 years ago, they are wanting development. They work for development, but they don't know how to get sustainable development. They can develop for the future and the future. So as if we just work for the sustainable development, there's no like problem of this, like no other problems, because like we are doing that long-term projects which like even future generations will come and like just implement it without saying that I have this today, there is not another and tomorrow another one is going to do this, and if it's not, another person will come and destroy what we did, and then another. Like, it's like we are in the chain which is endless. There is no purpose. We are just trying.
Yeah. It's a cyclical chain. Guys, thank you. I want to leave you. Thank you for all your participation. I want to leave you on a positive note, really. This week of environmental awareness is ending this weekend, is it? Or is this the last event? Or what's happening? So why don't we figure out what choices we have available to us? Yeah? We have 17 sustainable development goals. Which ones can we address and deal with and impact here while we are here? I give you guys that challenge. Pick a sustainable development goal and either make people aware, take an action, or make an issue your issue and be an advocate for some aspect. And start these individual sort of little revolutions that could happen. Yeah? Thank you guys really for your participation. Yeah?